My last read of April is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, her debut novel. And I liked this. I would recommend picking it up. And I'm also excited to see what else she writes in the years to come because I thought this was good. What I will say is that there are certain choices logistically with how the plot of this book is written that could have been more satisfying, and I think that's what prevents this from being an excellent book. But, you know, come on, it's horror, it's queer, you can't really go wrong with picking it up. My biggest gripe with this book is that because it is a slow burn, having it just be 230 pages long, it's difficult to achieve a slow burn with a book that's this short. I think if even if it had just been 100 more pages, just so that the pacing of it could be a bit more intentional, because it really felt a bit rushed in places, and even now there are answers that I wish we had, and I feel like it kind of just rests on the mystique of the subject material to not give us those answers and say like, oh, you know, it's spooky deep sea horror, like we don't need all of the clarity, but I would like some more. The narrative goes back and forth between these two women who are married. We have Leah, who has just come back from like a deep sea exploration, Titan submersible, think all of that stuff. And then her wife, Miri, the one, you know, who for the past 5 months didn't know what happened to her wife, was sort of, she's dealing with a lot of things as well that kind of get fleshed out, but maybe not as much as I would have liked. You know, she's a bit of a hypochondriac. She's not too long ago lost her mum, and so she's still feeling the bereavement of all of that. And so, I don't know, the way it alternates between her POV and Leah's POV, it felt a bit like a tug of war, where in Miri's chapters, we get like a very serious drama about the effects of grief on the human psyche. We sort of see Miri unraveling a bit, and that's worsened by her situation with Leah, because Leah has changed quite profoundly since being in like the depths of the ocean. But then when we get to Leah's chapters, it's no longer in the present, it goes back to the past, and we see what actually happened on that deep sea exploration and why it changed her, sort of. We don't fully get the answers on that, but then it completely changes because on that exploration, that's when it gets into the more sort of otherworldly, eldritch, deep sea horror of it all. And because that's kind of what I'm reading for, I enjoyed Leah's chapters so much more, but they were always shorter, and I wish there had been a bit more give and take and that they weren't so intermittent. You know, it was constantly like Miri, Leah, Miri, Leah, Miri, Leah. I don't know. I think the structure of this story could have been done more successfully. The whole time as well, I was kind of puzzled by Miri and why she was being so meek. Like, I understand that mentally she is in quite a vulnerable place in her life at the moment, and she really doesn't need, you know, this. She can't quite process what's happening to Leah, and so that's why she's not perhaps responding as she probably should. But I don't know, I think I needed something else to really get into the why of all of that, like why she doesn't seek help, why she doesn't do more until right at the very end when she realises that she has to sort of let Leah go. I, I don't know, it was a bit unclear for me, her whole motivation. Because if I compare this to The Tommyknockers, which is a sci-fi novel by Stephen King, which I love, but in that book, Bobby Anderson finds a spaceship, and the spaceship, the energy from it has this transformative effect on her where she becomes this unrecognizable alien-like figure. And even though she desperately needs someone to help her and to get her away from this spaceship because you can see the change that it's having on her, her boyfriend, Jim Gardner, he can't help her because he is like a quite a serious alcoholic and spends most of the book, you know, like in the throes of drunkenness, and he can't do anything because he is like passed out on the floor constantly drinking. And it's sad because I do think he really loves Bobby, but you know, at least then there's a motivation for why she's not getting the help. This, for me, there was an element of like quintessential horror tropes where I was like, okay, you need to be a bit more gung-ho with your wife, Miri, because if my life partner is spending most of the day in the bathtub, isn't really talking to me, and is behaving really strange, I want answers. Maybe I would die quite early on in a horror movie for that reason, but still, I was just surprised at how much of a doormat Miri became. Like, I understand the message was like, oh, she really loves her, and so she doesn't want, she's trying to like work through it all and hold everything together. But I don't know, it's something about it, it wasn't registering. Gosh, why do I sound so critical? I promise I did really enjoy this book. I mean, not really enjoy it, it was good. It was a good book. As I said, I'm very excited for what this writer comes out with in the years to come, purely because I love her sort of authorial voice, like the tone that she writes with really registered with me. Like, and you could tell that this was being written by a queer person because it really, it was informed, you know, it was, there was a dryness to the humour. It was very sort of tongue-in-cheek, and that really spoke to me because that's how I am. And I was like, yeah, like there was something about that that really resonated. And I thought the representation of a queer relationship was done really well. They really got into the sort of microaggressional mistreatment of people around them, being like, oh, is it okay if we call you wives? Like, it wasn't hitting you over the head with it. It was doing it in a way that felt very true to real life. And so that, I think this is a great queer read, even if it's not the best horror read. Truthfully, this book was giving me more science fiction than it was horror, because while it's very weird, I don't think I was ever scared by it, which is strange for me because deep sea horror, that normally affects me quite deeply because affects me quite deeply, deep sea, because I can't swim. Okay, I hate large bodies of water. That is something that I find very distressing. Like when I did AmeriCamp, at like a summer camp in Massachusetts, I never went out on the lake. Like I sat on the sandy beach and read Dostoevsky. I wasn't going near the water. So I expected to feel more visceral anxiety about this book, and yet it never quite got there. I think because so much of it was like after the fact, like we don't spend much time in the depths of the water, which was a real shame because had it found a way to better mix the two narratives, that could have been really, really scary. It is going to be such a strange comparison, but the book was really making me think of the music video to Adore You, the song by Harry Styles, where he has like a pet fish and he lives on like an island, and then the fish keeps getting bigger and he realizes like, oh, I have to let the fish go free because even though I love the fish, like this isn't the right environment for it. Like that's kind of what happens in the book, which I know that's a weird comparison, but that's what it made me think of. But I promise, Our Wives Under the Sea is a good book and I did enjoy it. I think I'm just speaking critically of it because I'm so much more frustrated at seeing how much potential this author has, and I think if the people around this author had better instructed her in the sort of pacing and the structure of it, this could have been a really amazing book. But you know what? Debut novel, very young writer, like this is an ace in the hole. Like I'm not mad at it, and I think you should read it.